Hey, I'm Kelsey, and welcome back to The Retro on the Digital Project Manager podcast, where we dig into past lessons, future trends, and what they mean for your career. We're live in the studio today with our DPM members, and we're here to talk about the Project Management Professional Exam, aka the PMP. So if you're thinking about getting your PMP, you've probably already heard all of the horror stories. It's hard, the failure rate is high, and there's all sorts of mistakes you can make that can trip you up along the way. But the PMP is still one of the most recognized, respected certifications in the project management world. And if you can pass it, it can unlock all sorts of career opportunities for you. But that's the question, right? How do you actually pass it? Especially if you're doing this while juggling work, life, and everything else. So today we're talking to Crystal Richards, a PMP trainer and the founder of MindsparQ, a training organization that helps teams improve their project management skills so they can lead projects with clarity, courage, and confidence. She's also the author of a new book that came out earlier this year called PMP Exam Prep for Dummies. Crystal, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. I'm excited to be here. Yes, and the book is out and already getting a buzz and excitement around it. So yeah, I'm excited.
So exciting. Congrats again on releasing that book this year. But yeah, why don't you get us started by telling us a little bit more about yourself and the work that you do?
Kelsey, you did a fantastic job. I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area in the U.S., and I train people to be better project managers. And the flagship service that I provide is PMP bootcamp training. And then from there, people have a great experience. And if the opportunity arises, I'll go in and teach foundational project management for the rest of their team so that they can all talk the same language. So I really am immersed in helping people become better project managers. And I love that teaching. And especially with my book now, I'm excited. I teach to the book. So people are really excited about it and all my humor and sarcasm, but the truth bombs are all in the book. So I love it.
Got to include those truth bombs.
Exactly.
Well, I want to get right into things by asking you about failure and the PMP. I think it's something a lot of folks who are taking it for the first time really worry about. And the stats that you can find online really don't help. I saw a few different exam prep sites saying that 80% of people fail it the first time they take it. Does that sound like an accurate number to you? Is it basically a given that you're going to fail this thing the first time?
I think that's maybe prior to 2021. Maybe that was more accurate. The challenge is that it's between you and PMI. So we don't know as instructors, we don't get stats on that. And PMI is a little bit more guarded, understandably so. And PMI, for those of you who don't know, is Project Management Institute, who's over the PMP credential. They're very guarded because if the news gets out, this is not a passable test, nobody's going to want to take it, right? And then if it's also oh, this is so easy, then employers might not see the value of if everyone can pass this exam. So it's kind of at catch-22. They've made it much more straightforward, I will say, after 2021, when everybody was in their houses, their dwellings, and you couldn't go to a testing center. And so they opened up being able to take it online. So in the comfort of your home, if that's what you choose. And it's not as tricky. So you didn't feel the bait and switch the way that we used to. But what makes it painful is that there's a lot of content and it's a lot of the vocabulary. It really, I literally start my classes in Spanish just to emphasize the point. It is like learning a new language. Some people do talk back to me in Spanish, but for the most part, it is really learning this new language and all of this information that you have to put back out there in the exam. And I would say people are taken aback by that. So if the struggle is that you're not successful with the exam, it's probably a couple of things that aren't related to what it used to be. And I don't want to spoil it because I'm sure you have specific questions for me around that. So, but that 80%, I think it's a bit inflated. I think it is, part of people's marketing tactics. That's not my choice to go at people. Honestly, I'm if you're self-sufficient and you're disciplined, just go buy my book. That's all you need. You don't need a boot camp. But for those folks who are I need structure, I need focus, I need someone in my face, Oh, that's totally me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So let's get into it. Like, what are some of the common reasons that people do actually fail the exam?
They wing it. They think that, oh, I've been doing project management for a long time, so I know what it is. And so they don't study and they don't realize the vocabulary that is PMI-ism versus what we call it in real life. Because for a lot of us, we're accidental project managers. I don't know very many people who went to school specifically for project management. And if they did, it was at the graduate school level. So you were already kind of immersed in it. But for a lot of us, it was baptism by fire, right? And you were told, work on this Gantt chart with no explanation of what a Gantt chart is, right? You're just like, okay, I just know it's called a Gantt chart, or work on this spreadsheet or this report. And it's got our own flavor of naming, but PMI has its own naming convention. And the funny part is, and devious, I would say too, is that they know what we call it in the real world. And that shows up on the exam. So you're like, oh yeah, that's what I call it. And that's not the PMI terminology. So that's point number one, is that you just go in and wing it and don't study. The other big thing is that people don't do practice exams and get you into a test taking mode. Because I would suspect for a lot of folks like myself, it's been a long time since I've taken an exam, a standardized test. And you do like 5 or 10 question exams. And you're like, oh, I did it. It's great. You're not prepared for nearly 4 hours of like just all this information that you have to figure out and keep saying to yourself the best PMI answer. Those are primarily the ones that really stick out, winging it, not taking a practice exam, and then thinking you're supposed to read the book. Do not read that book cover to cover. I mean, read my book cover to cover because it's meant for you to do that. But like there's the what's called the project management body of knowledge, or what we call the PMBOK guide. And it is so dry. If you have insomnia, it is the best book in the world. But if you want someone to give you an example, and that's what I found when I wrote the book, I wanted to give people the context, especially when I would come across the same questions in my classes. I brought that into this book where, for instance, if, here's the situation of using this tool, here's what it looks like from an exam perspective, and then also from real life. One of my favorite sections was talking about scope creep and gold plating to really solidify those concepts. And people found that helpful because, even though it's like, I need to teach you to pass the exam, they're like, well, give me a real world example. I'm like, well, real world is not going to help you pass the exam, but I understand what you need. You need that real world of how PMI-ism would be applied. And now it helps you understand from a scenario-based question on the exam. Oh, I remember Crystal provided a scenario like that, and I get it now. And this is how I need to answer this question the PMI way. So those are kind of the top 3. Don't wing it. Take practice exams. Do not read that PMBOK guide cover to cover.
Great advice there. So like during the test itself, you talked about it a little bit where like, we're not really used to taking 3-4 hour tests. So what are some of the mistakes that people might make while they're actually taking the exam? And what do you see successful test takers doing differently?
It's the time management. It's a total of 180 questions and it's 3 hours and 50 minutes. So 230 minutes. And I have them do the math and they're like, okay, that's about a minute and some change on a question. And what PMI has done is that of those 180 questions, they break them apart into 60 question blocks. And so you have time within the first 60 questions to skip around and answer all those questions. And the moment you hit, I'm done with those first 60 questions, then they say, hey, would you like to take a break? Take it, don't take the break. It doesn't matter. You don't get the additional 10 minutes if you don't take it. But once you go into questions 61 through 120, you can't go back to the first set of questions. And here's the thing. The exam is not going to say, hey, you've spent 2 hours. Maybe you should move on. That clock is still ticking. So when I tell students, they break it into those 3 blocks, 60 question segments. And I say, split it in 3s. And people are like, that's roughly 75 minutes per 60 questions. And so what they understand is that, oh my gosh, if I am spending 90 minutes just on questions 1 through 60, I am going to run out of time. And that's the time management that I really want people to understand. When they take a full length practice exam, you are going to see how your body reacts from the stressors to the tiredness, because it's a different experience. People say they have come out of that exam exhausted because also the exam's very wordy and scenario based. And so you have to sift through that noise. And I always joke with people like, be careful. You're in that question and you start bringing in your own life story. Yeah, that happened to me. And now you're like wasting 30 seconds on the exam, reliving, a project management pass. And that's where the practice exam questions are really good ones. They help you through that. And especially too, if the tendency to want to change your answer. 9 times out of 10, your first answer was the correct answer. So that is why it's also helpful to do practice exams so you can catch yourself from changing your answer. I'll do it in my classes and we'll do the letters and show our letters of questions. And it's so funny because I have them folded in 4s. And it's like, you remember the little game with the paper where we're like, my mom said you should, and like they're all like folding their papers. It's so funny. And like, I'm changing my answer. I'm sticking to it.
Oh my gosh.
And so they get to see like I changed my answer. My first answer was right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the cookie catchers. Yes. I forget, that's why I didn't say the name. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Cookie catchers. Yeah, I forgot the name of those. What a throwback. But yeah, so going back a little bit to the studying piece of all of this. So if someone is studying for the PMP while working full time, like what should they prioritize in their prep? Is there a framework or a routine you recommend that can help them stay on track?
I do, especially when you take a boot camp class. I really emphasize, because you spent the time and money for a boot camp. It's 35 hours, usually, a hefty price, but it's game time. Try to really make this a 4 to 6 week time frame. So that is something that if you're going to take that route, and it's still something that's possible if you just do self-study. It's just that you don't have that motivation per se, like, man, I spent all this money, I took time out from work, versus like, oh, I'll get to it. I'll start from the boot camp perspective. After the boot camp, I want you to think about, for the next 3 to 4 weekends, you're doing a practice exam. So in between work, if you can sneak in maybe 30 minutes before you have your Wheaties, right? 30 minutes of doing practice questions. And then an hour after you put the kids to bed or have your dinner, just reviewing the practice questions that you did at lunch and reviewing those areas that were a struggle for you. So going back, that's where, if you're referencing the PMBOK guide, for instance, you go there as like an encyclopedia to just, now that you have the context of missing a question, you're going in and you're like, oh, that's why I missed it. If you try to read it cold, you're like, I don't know what I'm reading. And this is where I also say to people, don't worry about having taken a class or done prior reading. Just do a practice exam so you can get a feel of the way that they ask questions. And then the material will really connect and resonate with you when you actually review it. And you're like, I saw a question. Now I see why that's the answer, because that's the PMI way of doing things. And if it's hard during the weekdays, if you can't do 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the afternoon, maybe kind of it's, the back end of the week, like your Thursday, Friday, you might pump it up a little bit of, maybe an hour and a half at night. But it's really that Saturday, maybe some parts of Sunday, obviously you want to make time for your life and family. But I also think if this is your personal and professional goal, just like any other goal we have, think about those times that, for some of you that may have gone back to school, you just made that commitment. You just carved out that time. And that's my encouragement for you, is just to carve out that time. And trust me, if you get this done sooner rather than later, your family will love you for it. They will like, it's PMP. And you'll stop cursing my name or like, Chris, let's just take the exam. So it is definitely worth it. Just as a quick anecdote, I had a student some years ago and she was dragging her feet. And it was like 2 weeks out to go on her family, like, huge family reunion on a cruise. And she's like, I'll just take my book. And I was like, no, you will not. I was like, you are not taking that material on a family cruise. You're going to ruin your time. Everyone's going to hate you. No, let's put together a plan. I put together a plan. I said, schedule this exam on this day. She's like, okay. She passed. Her whole family like sent me messages like, thank you. She was a terror. And she still to this day says I bullied her. And I was like, I didn't bully you. She's like, well, you bullied me to take this exam. And I'm like, and you passed. So,
Oh my gosh.
And your family likes you and me for it. So it's really, I had a student just recently that said to me, he's got, I think, 2 little kids. His wife is expecting. And he's like, I'm going to tell her, if you want to continue to stay at home and me to make more money, I need to pass this exam. I'm like, okay. We were like, okay, that's weird. So, and apparently that was music to her ears. So,
oh my gosh. I love it. There's a fine line between coaching and bullying.
Exactly. So maybe next time but I was like, you are not taking this material on a cruise. That's just not fun. You're not going to have fun and you're not going to study.
Amazing. But yeah, so you've mentioned the PMBOK a couple times, and I know that there is a new edition. The 7th edition is out. And I know the exam has changed a little bit as well over the last few years, as you mentioned, and it's including elements from beyond the PMBOK. So how can people make sure they are studying the right material and not wasting time on those outdated resources or outdated practice questions or practice exams?
Start with the source, pmi.org, and then go to their section that says certifications and go to the PMP. And that's where it will list their exam content outline. So the exam is no longer just based on one resource, which used to be the PMBOK guide. It's now based on several resources that are reflected in what we call the ECO, the exam content outline. And I would say it is a matter of, right now, it's still accurate. It says, exam update since 2021. Here we are in 2025. So it's still true, still accurate. We're suspecting, since you mentioned the 7th edition, so I got wind of the 8th edition that is expected to come out. And what we have, I think, seen in some publications or correspondence from PMI is that it'll probably come out in the fall of this year. And usually PMI's cadence is that they will change into the next year. So if they are going to be aggressive, it might be that the new updated exam will be January 1, 2026. Depending on how long it takes them to release the 8th edition. If they don't release the 8th edition until like December, then usually their cadence is that, okay, we'll give people that first quarter of the year and then just expect like end of March, April, that there's a new update to the exam. So they usually give people some time, sometimes a couple of months. In general, for those of you that are considering the PMP, it's always an end of year mad dash. Everyone's trying to meet their end of year goals, but it is going to the source. And, people will ask, you might like my presence and my personality. And some of you are like, she's too much. And that's fine. Definitely go to people that you know, who you trust. Like, what was your process? Did you do a boot camp? Tell me why you didn't do a boot camp. And just know thyself. I know for me, I have purchased so many online courses and never finished them. So yes, they're budget friendly, but you have to think about what your goal is. Is it that I want this because job prospects say you need the PMP and there's someone willing to give me an offer right now. If I have my PMP within 30 days, just do the boot camp and then work to negotiate that bonus or in your salary to cover the cost, if you will. If you are disciplined, you know that you can make the time, purchase a book, purchase an exam simulator, you should be good to go. But either way, certifications are just expensive anyway. Even if you were to go the self-paced route, whether it's a book or online, you still have to pay for the exam. then you have to maintain the credential. And this is a case of every 3 years. So I forgot the saying, but what is it, like a pound and a flesh and all this other stuff? I really need to read books more, but I've been writing one. So
You don't have time to read them if you're writing them.
I know. I'm just but I really am, I'm trying to get better at that. But it's, if you're trying to be penny wise, but, end up being kind of you spend more money anyway, just really have a heart to heart with yourself about, is this going to give me the biggest benefit, whether it is investing in a boot camp where it's one and done, and they give me a study plan, they give me resources, check out their websites, make sure that they're not some fly by night website, that they're reputable and that there's references, and, check them out on, Reddit is the underground, they know it all, right? They're truth bombs in there. And then go to LinkedIn or something to see if they're posting consistently and that this is their messaging and that they're not just showing up and then disappearing and then showing up again. You want someone that's going to be there for you if you decide to do the boot camp route. And then as far as a book, I think we all know, whatever your resources from a book purchasing, check out the reviews, not just the stars. Check out the actual reviews of people, because people are honest. I mean, some people are, hateful. Everyone gives them a 4-star or 5-star, and then there's just a 1 star. But you can still be discerning about the right resources for you. So
a couple more questions here for you. So if someone is listening to all of this and being like, wow, that seems like a lot of work, maybe this isn't worth the time and the money and the stress, what would you say to them? Is the PMP still worth it in 2025? Should they go for it?
I would say yes. If you are seeing positions that really interest you, or people who you admire and you see from their roles and their backgrounds, they have jobs that you're like, oh my gosh, I totally would love that. And you see that they have a PMP, I would say those are signals that yes, it probably is a credential that you may want to consider. Now, I'm always a big advocate of getting your company to pay for it. And I know that can be controversial because people are like, oh, if they pay for it, I've got to stay there, longer. In this market, I'm kind of okay with that right now. And then, like I said, everything's negotiable. If you find an opportunity and they want you, it's this is what I need to negotiate for me to jump ship, some type of sign-on bonus that you will pay back the company for it. So I think it's a win-win when your company pays for it or somebody pays for it. PMI has scholarships all the time. They have a foundation. There can be some opportunities, and you don't always have to be in an academic setting. I just find that so valuable. I mean, I just had someone ask me the other day via LinkedIn, should they go after this change management credential or the PMP, which is wild to me because I was like, those are two totally different certifications. I'm a project management trainer. And I said, it just depends on what you see yourself from a career standpoint. I am a person, which what I'm getting ready to say may be controversial. I am a person of be strategic about your certification chase. And sometimes the signal is when you have this alphabet soup of all of these credentials, it's now they're too expensive, right? Or, and it's expensive for you because you now have to maintain all of those credentials for the very point that I brought up earlier. You have to do a recertification and a recertification fee. And, sometimes the courses will overlap and there's reciprocation. I'm a certified Scrum Master, and the courses that I take with the Scrum Alliance, they translate over to PMI. And in most cases, my PMI courses will translate in some cases. But that's where it's definitely PMI is super giving. And that's something that I do appreciate. And I do recommend that anybody listening seriously consider being a member, just because of the added perks and the ease that they make for you. And it costs less to recertify as a member too. But PMI is incentivized for you to maintain your credential. So once you have it, it is super easy to maintain it. And they are very okay with you getting training. If you're a CISSP, the cybersecurity, if you have a SHRM health resource management certification, those are added benefits to you being an effective project manager because you need to know that to be able to walk the talk, especially if you're that subject matter expert along with managing those projects. So they're like, yeah, well, you read books. Yeah. Like if they're leadership books, if they're, it's because you signed or checked the box that you will be ethical. And so they're going to believe you. If you said, I read this book or I read these series of books to help me be a better HR expert, along with being a better project manager. So that's, for those of you who are considering the PMP, to kind of circle back to your original question, Kelsey, I mean, I think it's valuable if project management is the career field that you see. Everybody says that they're a project manager. So having the credential is just a way for employers to just kind of filter out people to say, okay, this person is truly serious and committed to the field. But, if you can get someone else to pay for it, I love other people's money. So
who doesn't?
Exactly. I love that.
I guess follow up to that question, like once you land one of these roles that like the PMP certification has helped you get, how often should you expect to actually use, what you learned while preparing for the exam in the role?
Oh, that's a great question. So I got the credential when I was working on a federal contract, and my boss said to me, you need to have this credential to be listed as key personnel on this contract. Once you pass the exam, forget everything you learned. And I was like, what? And at the time, I'm like, whatever, okay. Now that I'm in it and teaching it, I see so much benefit because they're teaching you better practice. And I see so much benefit in the things that you learn to be applied in the work. So I worked with one project management organization, and it was kind of hilarious. There's a tool that we teach called the RACI chart or RACI matrix, which tells you who's responsible, who's accountable, who do you consult, and who is informed. And during this planning meeting of other certified project managers, they were like, well, who's supposed to be doing this? Well, I don't understand who's doing this. And I didn't want to be that person. But in my head, I was like, where's your RACI matrix? Like, where is this? Like, so it is, if you decide to take my boss's advice and not use any of it, I think, that's a disservice for you and the credential quite. Because I think there are things that you can bring in. It's not required that you bring in everything. I think that's the rub for people, is that there's so much stuff. Nobody has time to do all that. Even PMI says, don't nobody got time to do all that. It's called tailoring. Like, bring in the pieces that make sense given the environment and the context of your project work. And sometimes even I'm careful about the use of the PMI language in the organization. If they call it a certain form, I just want to get clarification on, okay, they mean this. I'm not going to go and say, oh, you mean the RACI chart. Like, this is what it's called. That's not going to win you friends. I'm going to use the name that they call it and apply it from a project management. And I think, the small wins can help you as well, of like, I see a challenge with this. I'm going to kind of ease and use this tool and get them acclimated. And when they see that there's success, that there's better communication, hopefully better understanding about the project, I might start integrating another tool. So I think there is a huge benefit in really thinking about the tools. And, once again, since I'm here and I wrote a book, like that is really what I put that focus on, is that I was trying to strike that balance. But while you're in my pages, here's how it can add value to you. And I think that's something that's been missing in a lot of the books, because people are like, that's why you get into that. I'm going to forget everything that I learned anyway, because I don't see how it's applicable. And that was something that I really was adamant about bringing in. So
that's awesome. Well, we're just about out of time here. So can you leave us with one thing every listener can do to set themselves up for success with the PMP exam?
PM yourself into that exam. I mean, it is honestly set a date, and then just like all of our other projects, and then work backwards and communicate with the people in your life. So if your friends, your family, and tell them, hey, for 30 days, I'm going to be a terror. But I promise there's going to be absolutely your team members, your boss, like, hey, for the next 3 Fridays, if you can get the whole Friday off, take it off. If, they're like, we can't let you have a whole, like, negotiate for half days. It is really project managing that experience, and think, if you are more of an agile type of person, do it in sprints. And at the end of each week, your deliverable is a practice exam, and you get to see your results. And now that is the feedback now of what you need to do into your next sprint of getting through this. And, setting up the schedule. If you lightly use a project management tool, now like actually use Asana for what it can do for your Monday.com, and get the joy of like seeing the unicorn or whatever flies across the screen that you are meeting your goal. Because I've had a ton of people say that this was their personal and professional development goal for years. And do yourself a favor and project manage yourself around passing this exam.
That's great. Well, Crystal, thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
That's it for today's Retro. Be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. And if you want to keep the conversation going with a crew of 1,000+ project management pros who get it, come join us at thedpm.com/membership. Thanks for listening.